I broke up with my boyfriend on his birthday for horrible actions he did when he was a teenager. This happened some years ago. I, 26F at the time, had just started dating Thomas, 28M, and things seemed promising. Very sweet man, educated and quite smart, good looks. After 7 weeks of dating, he invited me and 2 of his childhood friends, let's call them Alex and Bart, for a long 29th birthday celebration weekend at his father's country house in a small French town. His father was going to be around as well, and I was very excited to meet everyone. Day 1, Friday, is fun. I am happy to get along well with Thomas's father, a smart and caring man. Day 2, Saturday. After a very nice day, we enjoy a party in the garden with the neighbors, including some friends of Thomas. After a few hours and lots of drinks, a group of people gather around a small campfire and start sharing childhood memories. This is where things go wrong. At first, of course, innocent and dumb stories, as you would expect. But then, Thomas and his friends started sharing really sick stuff. In particular, they told a story about how, when they were 14 or 15 years old, they found very amusing to bully for almost 6 months Arthur, a boy of their school who was very isolated and shy, making jokes, calling names, you name it. As if this was not enough, they created a fake girl profile on MSN Messenger, a computer platform to exchange live messages that we used in years 2000s, and spent fucking months exchanging messages with him under the false girl identity, flirting and developing a false relationship with the poor boy. Some people were in the confidence at school, and it became a big and cruel joke behind Arthur's back. They used pictures of Bart's real cousin, and the boy truly thought he had some kind of online girlfriend to whom he even sent confessions and love messages. At some point, they got bored and scheduled a false rendezvous IRL, asking the boy to take a bus for 2 or 3 hours, wearing a t-shirt Elmer the Elephant, based on a private joke. Obviously, there was no one waiting for him, and they did not know how long he waited over there, by himself. If Arthur had not already understood what was going on, he found out the next day at school, after Thomas and Bart told the story to everyone, and even shared the love messages that Arthur had been writing. The poor boy stopped coming to class and apparently changed school, and it is easy to imagine that this must have been extremely traumatizing to him. Do you think that Thomas, Alex, and Bart had any bit of shame about it? Not a bit of remorse, in particular on Thomas and Bart's side. They kept making jokes about it and even seemed to regret that they were not good enough at being evil to convince the boy to send nudes or sexy pics. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if he had done so. To say that I felt uncomfortable would be a gross understatement. I was absolutely horrified and started to despise Thomas more than anything. I was not the only one shocked. Thomas's father, who heard the end of the story, had the most disappointed look in the eyes. His stupid son was so drunk that he did not even notice it. I escaped the party immediately after that and got back to the house. I could not sleep at all this night, and I kept thinking about the evening and how Thomas was still finding this funny. I heard him coming to bed around 4 a.m., but I pretended I was asleep. Day 3 Sunday was the actual birthday, and the initial plan was that I would take Thomas on a 1-1 fancy surprise date for lunch nearby, and then we would meet the group for a late afternoon party. But instead, I woke up very early on Sunday morning, took all my stuff in silence, and went alone to the train station, where I took a direct train heading back to Paris. I decided to send a text to Thomas wishing him happy birthday and telling him to meet me at a certain location, 1 hour from the house, for a surprise, and that I needed to go a little bit in advance to make sure that everything would be perfect. I had picked the location randomly, using Google Maps to gain time. Thomas read the text around 10 a.m. when he woke up. He responded with excitement that he would follow religiously the instructions. When he arrived there at 12:30, I told him to wait further as there was little delay on something. Then I asked him to meet me at a restaurant which was 30-minute drive from the initial location. When he arrived at 13:15, I texted him that I was on my way, would arrive in 20 minutes, and that he will understand when he sees me why I made him wait. I also asked him to order some food and the most expensive bottle on the menu. Around 13:30, he started calling me several times and sent a lot of worried texts. and after 45 minutes I responded in French. So, how does it feel to have people play with your feelings? Then I stopped responding. I let him call and text the entire afternoon but never responded. At some point, an unknown number called me. It was his friend Alex asking what was going on, and that Thomas' birthday was completely ruined because of what I did. I just responded, "This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur. Tell Thomas to stop calling me," and hung up. I blocked them. I still felt bad the entire evening as I had started to grow attached to Thomas back then. The following days, a common friend called me to say that my reaction was completely absurd and unfair, that it was not my role to punish someone for actions they did as a teenager, that they were adult ways of saying things, and that I had been completely crazy. Only a few people supported what I did. Everyone else seemed to think that I was a bitch. Thomas tried to fix things and win me back for a few months afterwards. I never responded to any of his messages. I don't regret it. I simply hope that Arthur, who should be 35 or 36 years old now, is well. Story number 2. Stepdad cheats on my mom, so we get revenge. Initials for clarity. Me, 24 male. Mom, 50 female. Bro, 23 male. Sis, 30 female. Chris, the cheating stepdad, 45 male. Betty, stepdad's co-worker, 25 female. Darla, the other women, 40 female. This may be a long one, apologies in advance. I moved in with my mom after her marriage of 25 years with my bio dad was ended. He was a manipulative asshole, but that's another story. Shortly after the divorce, my mom introduced me to her boyfriend at the time, Chris. Now, my mom worked as a correctionals officer at the county jail. The boyfriend was a former inmate, in for a DUI. That should have been the first red flag, but my mom was grieving a long marriage, and I didn't want to push the subject. Chris seemed to make her happy, and that was enough for me. Me, bro, and sis all moved in with mom and Chris, and we seemed get along okay. Chris and I bonded a bit over our love of video games, and all seemed well. That is, until 2017. Due to Chris's prior DUI, he had to go in regularly for probationary checkups at the courthouse. One day, he didn't return, and we got a little worried. We then received a phone call from him from Texas. Turns out, when he arrived at the courthouse that day, he was jumped by the FBI. His family from Texas was implicated on a number of gang and drug-related crimes, and due to a situation where he was in a vehicle during a drug handoff, he was on the hook as well. He ended up agreeing to testify against his family members in exchange for a shorter sentence and allowed to be out of prison before the trial. My mom was distraught, and over the course of many phone calls over a year, they worked out their marriage plans when he returned. His store owner at the DQ he worked at allowed him to come back as well, back to his store manager position. Soon after, the drinking started. Now, obviously, because of his DUI, Chris was clearly no stranger to drinking. He began to drink more and more, to the point where he was consuming half a 24-pack of beer a day. Chris was a mean drunk. He regularly started fights when wasted, and while they never got physical, he wasn't exactly kind with his words. My mom enabled his behavior for several years, saying the stress was getting to him from work and from the upcoming trial. Finally, after several years, my mom had enough. Chris came home extremely drunk one night, and my mom confronted him. She asked if he'd been drinking, and when he didn't deny it, she kicked him out. He went to live with a friend temporarily. The next morning, Mom asked us to help gather a few of his essentials so that he didn't have to re-enter the home until he was sober. While we were gathering his things, we heard a knock at the front door. We opened it to find Betty, one of Chris's co-workers and someone I went to high school with. She told my mom she had something important to share. After sitting my mom down and telling her not to share where she got the info from, Betty told my mom about how Chris was cheating on my mom with Darla, how he regularly had Darla perform sexual acts in and around his workplace, how Betty had caught them, and how Chris told her that if she ever told my mom, he'd fire her. He was the store manager. And finally, how Darla was pregnant. My mom was angry. After the initial shock wore off, she told us to round up all of Chris's things and to dump it outside. We took everything of his out of the house and tossed it all in the alley behind our house. Chris had no reason or ability to return to the house. It was rented, with only my mom on the paperwork, so no issues there. In the meantime, She called and confronted him. He confessed to the entire affair and that he was happy. Darla was pregnant because that meant he'd finally have a child of his own. Mom refused to have more kids. We three were massive strains on her body. She likely wouldn't survive anymore. He refused to apologize for any of his actions. My mom arranged for him to collect his items from the alley, with an officer present, and he left our lives. Time for the revanche. Now my mom clearly wanted to dust her hands of him and move on. She was already quite emotional from the whole ordeal and wanted nothing more from him. But CSPRO, and I had other ideas. First, we called his workplace. DQ operates as an independently owned franchisee, and the owner of this branch owned several branches in the area. He was also a good friend. We informed him of the sexual acts being performed on the premises, and he went the processes of getting Chris booted from his position and barred him from any of the branches in the area. Funnily, Betty got his position after he left, and now runs a tight and clean ship. Chris no longer had a job or a place to live, and so went to live with Darla in a town about an hour away. We found out that he started working at another DQ in that town and informed the owner of that location of the situation. It took significantly longer due to there being no current indecent actions occurring there, but eventually he lost that job too. Soon after, Chris began driving around our neighborhood, seemingly stalking my mom and our family, probably because of his job loss. Now, due to the whole situation in Texas, he never had his probation lifted for his DUI, and thus still did not have a license. He never had to drive when he lived with us, since work was local and we could drive him as needed. But here was clearly driving around by himself when he shouldn't be. We contacted the police and informed them about Darla's vehicle in our neighborhood and that we believed Chris was driving it without a license. We told them to pull over the vehicle next time they see it, as it would likely be C driving again. Sure enough, a few weeks later, we were told that Chris indeed was pulled over and sent back to the local jail for driving without a license and while intoxicated. The police also did a search of the home he was staying at and found several guns at the premises. Since he was a felon, he was not legally allowed to have weaponry on the premises, meaning there was more jail time tacked on. By the time his jail time had finished, it was just in time for him to be sent back to incarceration in Texas for the trial. Chris's son was born while Chris was in prison. Darla evidently realized what an absolute ass Chris was and cut ties with him while he was in prison. During his prison time, Chris started sending tons of letters to my mom, stating how sorry he was, pleading to take him back, and ranting about how it wasn't his fault. All in the same letter, mind you. Mom burnt every one of them. We moved on, moving out of state. Chris evidently got out of prison some years ago, and now lives in Kansas, struggling and fighting child support, which Darla sued him for. Mom now has a new boyfriend, who treats her right and cares a lot more than Chris ever did. Bro and sis moved on and out, and I still live with Mom, assisting her with the newly purchased home that we've been renovating. Life's looking okay. I was reminded of this by a chat with a coworker about cheaters, and thought to post it here for others to enjoy. Story number 3. Boss from hell gets what she deserves. I, 30SF, have been a people pleaser to a fault my whole life. I have been working in marketing for 10+ years. Over the years, I've had my fair share of bosses who were good, average, and some who sucked. There is one in particular that stood out as awful. This story is from about 5+ years ago. Pamela, 40's not real name, was the VP of Marketing and Sales for a mid-size retailer. She started at the company a few years after I did. And if rumors were true, she was the 4th pick for the position and was simply hired so the company could appease shareholders. I was a manager under her, and my whole job was to make sure the website and stores had their products merchandised properly, received all their monthly sales materials, managed advertising, set up and managed the department's budget, PM'd all department projects and operations, created reporting to reflect sales, managed presentations, creative briefs for future projects, etc. In short, I did her work and all the administrative grunt work to keep the department afloat. I managed all this because I had access to her email and many times sent emails on her behalf to keep the department functioning. Pamela spent most of her time showing up after 10 a.m., taking business lunches and planning company parties. Don't even know why we did those, but I planned those too. I consistently questioned why she spent so much of our budget on these events when we didn't have the budget resources for any of it. Pamela told me to take from future months' budgets to pay for the current month's overspending. So, at the start of every month, I had an original budget, and by the end of the month, I had to turn in an edited budget, edited under Pamela's direction, that made it look like Pamela's spending was under control. This is important for later. I definitely made mistakes here and there, being in charge of so many tasks, and constantly found myself working 12-hour days, split between being in the office and working after my kid went to bed. Weekend work was also done before my family woke up and after they went to bed. During Pamela's first major holiday season, sales were shit. Pamela kept changing her mind on the visuals for the stores, kept bringing on new advertising and PR agencies to bring in sales. All these agencies consisted of her personal friends, and ignored our buying merchandise team's planned promotions for her own better ones. At this time, I'd been dealing with an ongoing infection that turned to sepsis and was hospitalized. The doctors and my husband said it was due to the stress of work and that I needed to take a break. As I recovered, I realized how much I was hurting myself, my family, and even the company I worked for. Eventually, my old habits got to me, and I got on my phone and checked mine and my boss's emails. What I found made my blood boil. First, I got a lovely bouquet of flowers from upper management wishing me well, and I knew that Pamela organized the delivery. She sent me her favorite flowers. I went to her inbox to put the receipt in the correct folder to send to accounting when I got back. At the top of her inbox from the past 3 days were emails clearly not related to business. What I found in her emails was Pamela emailing her personal friends, griping on how I can't just shake off sepsis and get back to work. She also complained that she couldn't find any of my notes, spreadsheets, or documents for any of the work she was technically in charge of. They were on our shared drive, labeled very clearly. Finally, I found an email where she sent a friend from a previous company asking for advice on how to bring in sales and save her job. In this long thread, this old colleague asked if there was anyone managing most of the work, and of course, Pamela said I was. This colleague explained that clearly it was my mismanagement that was causing issues, and that I could be blamed if sales didn't pull through by the end of the season. Pamela mentioned that I was in the hospital and repeated comments from her other email thread. This person said that she couldn't outright fire me because it could seem like retaliation because I needed to take emergency medical leave. But if Pamela could prove I was stealing from the company or misusing company resources, then she would have grounds to have me fired and use me as a scapegoat. Upon my return, Pamela called me into her office and said she was worried I was taking on too much and wanted to take work off my plate. She announced was taking managing the department budget off my plate. She asked me to only drop off a small stack of invoices to accounting. Additionally, Pamela told me under no circumstances was I allowed to talk to accounting about anything regarding budgets. Also, if I had any concerns about the department or workload, I wasn't allowed to go to HR. I had to discuss it directly with Pamela. Oh yeah, I could see where this was going. Unfortunately for Pamela, I had built a rapport with Lois, 50s, not real name, who was our main accountant. Lois always said that she would do everything in her power to help me should I ask. Knowing this, I grabbed the stack of invoices off Pamela's desk to give to accounting. I also added the email threads I read while I was in the hospital, and the current unedited budget that Pamela hadn't touched yet for the month. I also found in my filing cabinet the hard copies of old budgets with Pamela's handwriting on what numbers to change to balance our budget. Finally, I added an email from our first round of budget adjustments where Pamela's subtlety threatened to put someone else in my job if I couldn't do what she asked. So I walked and dropped off the invoices to accounting when I bumped into Lois. She brought up invoices and I sternly looked at her and said, "Pamela is the only one in our department that Lois is allowed to talk to about our budget and invoices." Lois saw the suspiciously thick file folder on her desk, gave a firm nod, and lovingly kicked me out of her office. Within the week, Pamela was fired. From what I understand, she has been continually job hopping for the past few years. The CEO and HR brought me in to personally apologize for everything I went through and gave me a paid 1-week vacation to take at my discretion. Given other issues with this business, I left after another year, which brings me to today. I am once again a manager for sales and marketing. I have a wonderful boss, Mike, 40s M, who trusts my business decisions and backs me up on practically everything. We are hiring my team for me to solely manage and direct. Today, I looked through the applicants and found Pamela's resume sitting among dozens of others. I stared at her name, wondering how many other people share her name. Upon review, yup, it's her. She definitely fell down the corporate ladder, with VP of our old company being the highest title she earned. And, to no surprise, she embellished her achievements, claiming the work I managed as her own, and claimed she generated an 87% sales growth during the holiday season at our previous company. As a people-pleaser who firmly believes in giving everyone a chance, it has never been so satisfying to click disqualified. Edit. To those suggesting I interview her to see her reaction, I would have loved to see her face as she walked in. But I felt it would have risked my boss's trust in my decision-making ability. Maybe I'll send a personally written rejection email. Story number 4. My friend humiliated me in front of my friends, so I ruined his grades and humiliated him in front of the whole batch. My classmate humiliated me in front of my friends, so I humiliated him and screwed his grades in front of the entire batch. The story begins on Monday. Today's a Saturday. My classmate was sitting next to me in a lecture, and the professor called me up to fix the projector as she wasn't able to show the PPT she had made for the class. Now, like everyone else, I had my laptop out, and I left my desk to help her. This so-be classmate of mine decides to take my laptop and open my browser and show the benches behind me, my search history. Let's just say it had adult content from last night. I returned back to my desk to find people giggling at me. Then I find out that they had seen my history and the porn I had opened seen last night. Now at least 10 people knew I was into MILFs. It was humiliating for me because this was personal. Some of you may ask, why don't you use private browsing? Well, because I am an adult viewing porn on my own laptop. Ethically, nobody should be going through my history on a laptop which belongs to me. I shut up and acted like nothing was the matter, but inside, I was seething with rage. Today, he sat next to me again. We had to do a presentation in our anthropology class. This man had prepared a PPT just like everyone else and kept it on his desktop. He decided to go take a leak before the professor arrived in class. This was my opportunity. I went into his laptop and took a screenshot of his desktop. Then I selected all the folders in his desktop and deleted them and emptied the trash. I then turned off transparency effects in the start menu so that his taskbar doesn't look weird and set that screenshot as a wallpaper. The man returned and his laptop appeared unchanged. He smiled at me and told me to delete my browser history before I plug in my laptop to the projector for my presentation. I laughed at his joke. The presentations began and his turn came. The dude was frantically clicking on the folder containing his PPT, but nothing was happening. He looked frightened. The professor scolded him for wasting her time and told him to get back to his place. This was a graded assignment and he scored 0 on it. Everyone in the class was also laughing at him. I finally suggested to him that he should reinstall Windows. It typically fixes all issues. He did that, and in the process lost all his data. But his computer was back to working condition. Edit. Some of you are talking about leaving the laptops unlocked and the story being fake. It's up to you to believe it or not. But yeah, we typically just leave our laptops unlocked because we don't expect people to fuck with it in a uni. We are supposed to be mature adults. Did people see me do that shit? Maybe some did, some didn't. People are usually too busy chatting with their peers to notice these things when the professor isn't around. It's almost like how a thief could be using an angle grinder to steal a locked bike in public and people will notice but not really notice. It's just a matter of bringing his laptop in front of me and working on it and placing it back where it was. Also, my porn was noticed because he opened my browser history and actively asked people to take a look. I didn't. I just nonchalantly moved the laptop towards me, changed a few settings in under a minute and put it back where it was. Story number 5. You don't like your boyfriend seeing me braless in the dorm? Then he won't. I live in a college dorm on an all-female floor. I usually wear a bra if leaving the dorm building, but I'm not going to put on a bra under my shirt just to walk down the hall to the bathroom. A few days ago, I left my room and walked 10 yards down the hall to the water fountain, refilled my water bottle, and went back to my room. I was wearing a white tank top and no bra. The tank top was fitted but not see-through, so you could only see the outline of my nips. There was a small group of people hanging out in the hall outside a few of the rooms, but I didn't think much of it. Until around half an hour later, when I got a knock on the door from one of the girls I'd seen in the hall. She said something to the effect of, "Hey, so sorry to ask you this, but if you go out into the hall again, could you put a bra on? My boyfriend's out there and he was staring a little, so..." I'm super non-confrontational, so I was like, "Yeah, sure, sorry about that." And for the rest of that night, anytime I left my room, I put a bra or sweater on. And that was the end of it. Or so I thought. The next day, my roommate told me she'd overheard the girl telling a few of her friends about the incident while in the bathroom. She said the girl was making it sound like I'd been purposely trying to seduce her boyfriend, wearing basically nothing, taking my time at the water fountain, posing to push out my tits, the whole works. When she left the bathroom, my roommate said the girl was actually acting it out at the water fountain, pretending to be me. That night, I passed the girl and some of her friends on my way to go brush my teeth. I wasn't wearing a bra. I was already in pajamas. The girl looked pointedly down at my chest, and all of them started giggling. But the last straw was when the entire dorm got an email from the RA yesterday, saying she'd gotten some anonymous complaints about people dressing inappropriately in the hallways, and asking that we all just make sure we're keeping things covered up. So here's where I got my petty little revenge. I knew that the girl's boyfriend doesn't go to college here. The girl and I were in the same orientation group and chatted a bit back then. I also knew that due to the pandemic, we aren't allowed to have non-student family guests in the dorms this year. So I used the same anonymous complaint form to issue a complaint about people bringing their off-campus boyfriends into our dorm and them not wearing a mask. Masks are mandatory in the hallways, although not frequently enforced. This morning, the RA emailed again, saying that due to anonymous complaints, they'd be enforcing the no off-campus guests rule by checking IDs of unfamiliar guests to make sure they were students from then on. Really, this girl should be thanking me. If she was concerned about her boyfriend seeing the vague outline of my tits in the dorm hallways, she no longer needs to worry. Story number 6. Am I the a-hole for not getting rid of my cats? I, 30 female, am currently pregnant and have recently told my friend Josie, F28. My partner and I have been together for 10 years and we have 4 cats together, all rescues. Upon finding out about my pregnancy, my friend asked me what we were going to do with the cats. I asked her what she meant by that. She gave me the whole thing about pregnant ladies not being able to change litter boxes, blah blah blah, and that I should give my cats away to protect the baby. I told her that this was not happening. If I were to get toxoplasmosis, I probably had it by now. Grew up with cats. My family had cats before I was born and after. I always had cats, and besides, gloves exists and washing hands and my partner can change the litter box anyway. I tried to explain this to her politely. She was shocked and couldn't believe how I could be so flippant about my child's health and that I would be a shit mother for putting cats above my child. I told her she had no idea what she was talking about, and I would be a horrible mother if I taught my child that animals are disposable. They're not. They're part of the family. She scoffed and called me an asshole. She then started telling everyone at work. We work together. And the ladies all agreed with her and believed that I should be getting rid of my cats. Am I really the asshole here? Comments. Not the asshole. You're absolutely right. Pets are family, and you don't just get rid of them because you're adding a baby to the household. The rest of them are F-ears who probably don't like cats and are trying to pass that off as concern for you. Story number 7. I exposed an affair because it was affecting my sleep. So I'll start with understanding what I did wasn't exactly right, but I regret nothing. TLDR. My upstairs neighbor is having an affair and it's disrupting my sleep. So I found the wife online and messaged her. Problem solved. My upstairs neighbor has been having an affair with a married man for about 4 months now. I wouldn't care, but because it's an affair, He comes over at odd hours of the night and they have sex very loudly. I can hear a lot, and it wakes me up, prevents me from sleeping. How do I know it's an affair? He's never spent the night and his car has baby car seats in there. Some backstory: I've had issues with my upstairs neighbor prior to this. She would throw parties on Monday nights. She gets home at 2 a.m. from work, pacing her condo and having loud phone conversations. She's 40 years old, throwing parties with 20 YO and having affairs and living like a teenager. I tried to talk to her like a normal person about my concerns, but she doesn't care, and I've had to get the association involved to stop the parties. I hate her. So I decided to learn some more about this mystery man. I looked up the license plate, found an address, searched the address, and found a name. Took the name and did some social media stalking and found the man and his wife's profiles. I made a throwaway account, messaged the wife about the affair. I haven't seen him now for a few weeks and I'm sleeping really nicely. Edit. People asking, how did you find the address? Website called InfoTracer. Story number 8. Guy quit his job thinking he became rich. Hey, new to Reddit. I thought I would post my story here. I work for a construction company and we do remodeling on homes. We have a rule here that we get to keep anything we find hidden behind the walls. We hired this guy, we really needed a worker badly, who was a total a-hole from day one. I've been working for this company for 5 years, and this guy has only been doing construction for 1 year after he got fired from his accounting job for getting a DUI. Anyways, he would always make fun of my clothes and my accent, and one day he went too far by telling my boss about my private Instagram account pics. He got on my phone and looked through my Instagram page and showed my boss pictures of me smoking weed. Little did he know that my boss is my friend from 8 years when we used to smoke together before we both quit. I was so mad that he violated my privacy. Then I made a plan to fuck him over. He was the kind of guy who would always come in late and complain that trains or traffic is why he was always late. One day, I overheard him saying that if he won the lottery, he would quit this job for not getting the respect he deserves. You have to earn your respect here. One day, I bought some fake gold coins online, and I put them in a metal box I found at the antique store and waited for a chance to hide it in a wall. Luckily, I did not have to wait long. The day he found the coins, it seemed like it was his best day ever. First thing he did when he opened the box, he called my boss a fing loser and he quit immediately on the spot. He said, F this place, I'm rich. Lol. Little did he know was that was the best day of my life. After he quit, my boss told us that he was going to fire him anyways for always showing up late. I wish I could see the look on his face when he finds out the gold coins are fake. Best $40 I spent in my life. I apologize for my grammar. This just happened today, and my adrenaline is pumping hard. Thanks for reading. Edit. These houses are bought at auction. People don't live here, so everything is owned by the construction company. Story number 9. My hag of a stepmom gave away my PlayStation 4 while I was away in college. So I rent out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. I have been reading lots of Reddit lately, especially entitled Parents, but made a new account when I came across this page. I never thought I'd actually try to contribute something. Until now, Reddit has just been my guilty morning coffee read. So here goes. I'm an only son. My mom died of ovarian cancer at only 55 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They had been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22, and am about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full-ride scholarship. This is important later. My dad met my now stepmom when she was my mom's nurse at the hospital, where she spent her final days. My stepmom, Grace, played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mom passed. I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources. But it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school and had just won a scholarship to attend college out of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and that whole time, Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion, to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other. I didn't like her, but at the same time, my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore. So I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut, I didn't trust her, though. But we are Scandinavian, and at least in my family, the son does not tell his father what to do or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic, if you're wondering. My father was a very successful banker during his career and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details, but after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father are married. My dad never really got over my mom, though, and he was getting weaker and weaker even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading, he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I don't need anything. I'm a man and can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I had a full scholarship to college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. He was dead only a year later at 59. I, of course, have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I consider the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her, but I really honestly do not think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad was totally in love with my mom and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me, even though I wasn't expecting it and didn't ask for it. He gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of all his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gave me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were, of course, very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell she was angry as hell that she didn't get my dad's house too. That belonged to me, and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we live in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house, though, because over the last 3 years, she had gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple of months, and even then, it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my house, and over the months, I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house. She probably believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had, that I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew I'd eventually hydrogen bomb this biatch when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground. And one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy-looking D-bag named Ivan, who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. I don't even know this motherfucker, and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other shot who I also don't know. I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that she and Ivan were getting married because I just can't mourn your father forever. I have to move on with life. I tell her that I graduated college and already secured employment with a local firm and will soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled, especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then, in a patronizing way, she tells me, "You always have a place in our house, though. You are welcome to stay whenever you please." Thanks, Grace. Really generous of you. What I really say is that I will probably have a new place in 3 months. She says that is wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan and afterward have her honeymoon. She assures me it's a local affair. Otherwise, I'd invite you, honey. And anyway, I know you're so busy. I congratulate her. She asks me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Sure. What I really say is, of course, I will take care of the house. I am careful to not say your house. She and her D-bag fiance, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, go on their trip, and I immediately put out advertisements in rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into a storage rental facility. I retain all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks changed, all of them. Within days, I am inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family, a barrister and his school teacher wife and their 2 preteen children. They pay me their first and last month's rent and sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house, but I present them with contact information to my lawyer, the same lawyer my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my new place of work. There I met a woman in a restaurant I frequent at night after a long workday. We have been dating 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace, of course, tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without my having to ever speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country, and I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and will soon be broke like chavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try to exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much money that I not only am able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment of my own, together with my fiance. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at the house, just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the hell out of my room. But no, she had to act all proprietary. So I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. Postscript. I bought another PS4, even though I didn't even use my old one that much. It didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things. You give away your own things. Which is why I chose to kick Grace out of my house. Because it's mine, and I decide who stays there. Story number 10. Deliberately deplete my prepaid phone balance? You will pay for it 1,000 times over. I went to middle school in the early 2010s, right before smartphones really took off. I got my first phone right before starting 6th grade. It was a slide phone with a pay-as-you-go plan that cost $0.10 per minute for calls and per text message sent or received. Worse yet, sending or receiving photos cost $0.25 each. It was very expensive, and my parents only gave me $100 a year for this. If I exceeded the amount, I had to cover the rest with my limited birthday and Christmas money I had. Fortunately, most of my friends were good about helping me preserve the balance. They would call and I'd let the call drop, but immediately call back on a landline so it wouldn't count as a call, and they'd email me or message me on Skype for most things. Everything was good until Derek joined the group in 7th grade. At first, we thought he was funny, but we quickly got fed up with him, as he was very unpleasant and exhibited many antisocial behaviors. He started drama within the friend group and also caused issues between us and other kids outside of the group. He was manipulative and always played the victim when others rightfully called him out on his shit, and he knew how to charm parents. So getting rid of him was easier said than done. He was the one friend who didn't respect my phone situation. He very frequently texted me dumb memes, even though I told him multiple times to just email or Skype them to me instead, since picture text messages cost $0.25 each. Unfortunately, blocking phone numbers was a feature that was unavailable for this pay-as-you-go plan, so there was nothing I could do as he spammed my phone. One day he got mad at me for some reason and spammed my phone with memes. He must have sent me over 100 lolcats over text. He kept sending them until I lost service since my phone balance was depleted. I had lost the $40 remaining in my account as a result. I was extremely pissed and demanded that he pay me the $40 he had cost me. And he refused and said it wasn't his problem. I got home from school really upset and told my dad about the situation, expecting him to go and tear Derek's mother a new one and demand the money, but my dad said that it wasn't worth the battle. I even asked him about a small claims court. but he said that not all battles are worth fighting, and that the effort wasn't worth $40. He took me to the carrier's store and loaded $50 onto the phone. The carrier changed my phone number and they managed to block Derek's number. They had initially said that blocking phone numbers wasn't possible with this plan, but my dad insisted and would not leave the store until they did it. I was extremely paranoid about my phone number being leaked and other kids spamming it to fuck with me. Fortunately, my parents got iPhones that summer and got me one too, and the new family plan had an unlimited text plan. Nonetheless, I was pissed at the $40 he essentially stole from me out of malice. Fortunately, not too long after, there was a big blowout between Derek and the rest of the friend group at the end of the school year, and we permanently kicked him out of the group. He was an outcast the following year in 8th grade, nobody was tolerating his shit anymore, and he changed schools the year after and we never heard from him again. Fast forward to a few years ago, I was back home for a few months between graduating college and starting a new job on the other side of the country. I went out to some garage sales one Saturday morning, and I ended up at Derek's house. I recognized his mother, but I don't think she recognized me. I guess glasses and a beard is all you need. I noticed some Pokemon napkins out for sale, and when I picked them up to look at them, Derek's mom said that her son had been obsessed with Pokemon for his whole life, and that she was tired of Pokemon stuff occupying her home for so many years. I said that these napkins were for my younger cousin who is really into Pokemon, and asked if she had any more Pokemon stuff. She said she didn't know people were still into that, and that there were a few boxes in the attic with her son's old stuff. She actually took me inside the house, which I never imagined I'd set foot inside ever again, and let me climb up the attic ladder and take down several large boxes to look through. The first one had Christmas ornaments in it and other junk, but I freaked out inside when she opened a box jam-packed with Pokemon video games in the original boxes, though I kept my cool on the outside. The whole reason I had agreed to go inside in the first place was because I was holding out hope of this exact scenario happening. See, I knew Derek was obsessed with Pokemon. Our friend group liked Pokemon back in the day, even when other kids thought it wasn't cool, but Derek was on a whole different level. He bragged about his Pokemon collection all the time. At the time, he had every single main series game in the original box, and in mint condition, as he always had to add in. I went to his house once and he was showing me his collection. He yelled at me for touching one of the games. Nobody was allowed to touch them except him. He had many older Nintendo games in excellent condition, but Pokemon was his favorite. He had had a couple of incidents with his mom damaging or throwing away his things. It wasn't out of malice, but just ignorance, as she didn't think the games or collectibles had any value. Fast forward into the present day, I was thinking about this when I asked his mother if she had any other Pokemon stuff. She ended up bringing out the motherlode. We opened all of the boxes she had me bring down. Within the boxes there was the beloved collection of Pokemon games, all very well preserved, as well as several Nintendo consoles, hundreds of games, 24 binders full of Pokemon cards, and there was also a box of many Lego sets, with the original boxes and everything, with many old Star Wars sets. When I saw Jango Fett, I knew I struck gold. I told her that I liked old Legos as well and asked her how much for the 5 boxes of games, cards, and Lego sets. And she thought for a second and said $100 a box, or $400 for all 5. I told her I would take it all and hauled ass to get to an ATM. I loaded the 5 boxes into my dad's truck and immediately drove home. I knew there was potentially tens of thousands of dollars of goods here. This was the score of a lifetime, and I finally felt vindicated for the $40 Derek had taken from me all those years ago. I ended up giving all the stuff to my uncle, who's a hobbyist eBay reseller. He offered to sell it all. He was willing to go through the effort and sell everything individually, and despite my insistence, he said he wouldn't take more than a 10% cut of the profits after all fees and taxes. We went through and logged every single item along with the estimated value, and the total of the whole lot was about $40,000. 40,000 was a poetic number since this was 1,000x the value of what Derek stole from me all those years ago. Story number 11. My wife went out last night and didn't come home until this morning. This is horrible. I'm furious right now, but I'm also depressed as hell. I know what I have to do. It's just killing me that I have to do it. It's fresh, and it hurts a lot. My wife didn't come home last night. She went out with a couple of girlfriends, which is pretty normal for her. She's normally back around 2 a.m. on these nights. So I waited up. Around 2:30, I called to check in. She answered, and I could hear people in the background. She told me they went to a party but were leaving in a couple of minutes. She wasn't home by 3, so I texted. It delivered, but no reply. Around 4 a.m., I called again. It rang a couple of times before she sent me to voicemail. My wife finally came stumbling through the door at 6:47 a.m. this morning. I know the exact time because I was worried. She was wearing a dress she didn't leave the house in, with mesh leggings I've never seen either. The leggings had clearly been torn and her makeup was smudged. My heart sank when I saw her. My immediate worry was that she had been assaulted. She only shook her head no when I asked her that. I asked her what she had been doing then. She only said that I knew what she had been doing, and that kind of confirmed what the voice in the back of my head had been screaming since she walked in. My wife cheated on me last night. I asked her who it was. She shrugged almost casually and said it was somebody they met at the club. She went back to his house and hooked up with him, then Ubered home. She then said she didn't want to fight and just wanted to sleep. So that's what she did. She's still asleep now, and didn't even take a shower before passing out. Suffice to say, our relationship is over. We don't have any kids, and we rent, so it shouldn't be an extremely complicated process. I keep trying to reason myself out of it, pretending there might be something to salvage here. I've always maintained that cheating would be a red line for me, though. I think I need to stick to that now. Update number 1. Me again, folks. I'm sorry I didn't get around to this sooner. I wasn't able to get the day off work yesterday because my boss kinda sucks. I was a complete mess at work yesterday, though, so I was allowed to take the rest of the week as vacation, thankfully. I think I went through all of the stages of grief while my soon-to-be ex was sleeping. I wasn't expecting my post to get any attention at all. I just figured I needed to try to talk to someone about it, because I was not in a good headspace. I made the post in the morning, and by noon, she was still conked out in the bedroom. I had processed things a bit more, and I had a rough plan in my head that I was starting to set in motion. I made a short list of questions I wanted answers to, gathered up all my important documents, laptop, etc. Then I went into the bedroom and started packing myself a suitcase. I know a lot of folks wanted me to kick her out. I did consider it, but honestly, I'm not overly attached to this place. We just rent, and I'm in a lucky enough situation to be able to say that paying half the rent for a few months isn't going to financially end me. It'll sting a little bit, I won't lie, but I'll make it, and I feel like being around this place is only going to remind me of her anyway. I need to be looking forward, not back. She ended up waking up about halfway through me packing my suitcase. There was momentary confusion as she looked around the room, then she just started bawling. Maybe this is awful of me, but I didn't bother comforting her. I told her I had the screenshots of her Uber and text messages from her phone, and that plus her confirmation was enough that things between us were completely done. She didn't answer me and just cried louder. I debated trying to continue the conversation, but I decided to just pack the rest of my suitcase and head back out to the living room until she came out. When she finally left the bedroom, she sat next to me on the couch and asked me if we could talk things through. I told her as calmly as possible that wasn't how things were going to work. I was going to ask questions, I wanted honest answers. She told me she'd be honest, so I proceeded. My voice was shaking the entire time. It was taking me everything to hold it together, but I kept going. Was this the first time she had cheated? She started crying before she answered that, then told me no. She had cheated on me multiple times over the course of our relationship. It was, and I'm going to use her words exactly here, just sex. A way for me to let off steam. None of it ever meant anything. I wrote a comment shortly after making my post that all the love couldn't just fade away in one swoop. Well, it can. It hit me right then that I wasn't dealing with my wife. The person I was married to literally wasn't in the room. This was someone different. She refused to tell me exactly how many times she had cheated, just more than last night. Had she used protection? No hesitation from her before she nodded her head emphatically. She seemed surprised I'd even ask that. I'm still going to get tested just to be safe. I did some research into timing and I'm going to look after it. Were her friends also cheating on their spouses? Yes and no. I tried to get her to tell me which of her friends were cheating so I could get in contact with their spouses. She probably should have, because her refusal led to me messaging pretty much the romantic partner of every one of her girlfriends I could find on social media. There are a couple I don't know or couldn't find, but I did my part. Why did she do it? This was the answer that gutted me the most. I'm going to use her exact words again. I need to have sexual variety. I told her that it's not like our sex life is dull, she clarified. It's not the same as something new. I didn't even have a response to that one. I had expected something about me working too much, or not supporting her emotionally. Nope. She just fucked other guys because she felt like it and wanted to have some fun. When I didn't respond, she started asking me about counseling and therapy. I reiterated that our relationship was over. I'd be leaving. What she did next disgusted me. My ex actually tried to have sex with me. She put her hands on me and started trying to take off my clothes. I felt like I wanted to vomit and pushed her away after a couple of seconds. She just kept telling me that she would figure out a way to fix it, that we would work through it together. I told her that there was no way, and she started bawling again. She went to the bathroom and locked herself inside. I was just sick of everything at that point. I called her mother and told her what was going on. The full story too, the cheating, the questions I had asked, and the fact I was leaving. I've always had a good relationship with my ex's parents. They both decided to drive to town, which is about an hour for them. Once I knew someone was on the way, I just grabbed my things and left. Her waterworks in the bathroom were just annoying me because it felt hollow to me, especially given the answers to my questions. I ended up packing another bag before I left and took all the things that I could think of that I felt sentimental attachment to with me. I found a parking lot and sat in my car until I was able to get in contact with a buddy for a place to crash. I tried to take a nap, but I was running on way too much adrenaline. I knew when her parents had made it to the apartment because she started calling me. When I didn't answer those, she started texting me. She had gone from sad and crying to furious. Apparently I'm a fucking piece of shit for telling her mom everything. Whoops, I'm not sorry. I've received roughly 100 texts from her since leaving. They range from name-calling all the way to begging me to come back, to sending me pictures of the food she ate for some reason. I haven't responded to any of them. I feel like I said my piece before leaving. So that's where I'm at now. We didn't have joint finances, so that part was easy. I canceled all the subscriptions that go to my credit card just to be sure, and changed all my important passwords. I'm crashing on a friend's couch for the next bit, but I've got some feelers out to some short-term rental places until I can find something more permanent. I've got feelers out for a divorce attorney, too. A coworker of mine had a recommendation, so barring something better, I'll probably go with them. I also wanted to say that I was shocked how supportive everyone was, and thank you for that. Truly, from the bottom of my heart. It isn't easy for me to talk about emotional things with people close to me. This was an invaluable venting place for me. Thank you all so much. TLDR. This wasn't the first time she'd cheated on me. I packed up my things and left, and I think I'm on track to being in a better place. Working on initiating divorce proceedings now. Final update. Hey folks, I'm happy, I guess, to say that this will be the final update to what has been probably the most difficult chapter of my life. I've felt an immense amount of support from the community here from my initial 2 posts, so I wanted to give a short update. Bottom line, my ex and I both signed the final papers for our divorce this week. It feels kind of surreal to think about that still. About 2 weeks into everything, she got resistant. I cut her off entirely, and she refused to return my attorney's calls for a little while. Eventually, things got back on track. As for the infidelity itself, I don't have a ton more details to share with you. We did a short mediation, and by that time, I didn't feel there was any remorse on her end. I've talked about that a lot with my therapist. I'm in therapy, by the way. It still hurts that someone who I thought loved me could have apparently cared about me so little, but I'm working through it. That's really all I've got to share. Thanks again, everybody, for your advice and support. Here's our last story. My kids are obese, and my husband is sabotaging my efforts to fix it. My husband, 37M, and I, 35F, have been married for 15.5 years and have 2 wonderful kids, 12MN and 8F. They are smart and funny and sweet and are loved more than words could ever describe. But over the past few years, they have both gained an alarming amount of weight and are considered obese. I was the fat kid, bullied relentlessly, and later developed a horrific ED that ended in an involuntary hospitalization. All before we had kids, neither of them know anything about that. So I'm deaf aware of how damaging words can be for them and have tried to low-key push healthy habits and proper portions most of their lives. My husband has always had a fast metabolism and been able to eat whatever, and was extremely food insecure as a child, and I know that affected him immensely. He has always hated healthier stuff, calling it rabbit food. He likes cheese and butter and high-fat everything, and BC, he works a physical job. He is able to eat massive amounts without consequences. I work a lot myself, so I don't have time to make two diff dinners, and making them eat something different than us just seems like it would potentially be mentally damaging. Every time I suggest he make something for himself while I make something for the kids and he gets really mad about it. Like almost defensive, but mostly just acting like it's the most ridiculous and unnecessary idea to ever be conceived. And I don't want to fight with him, BC, that isn't good for the kids to hear either. Recently, our kids opened up about being bullied for their weight, and I've noticed a decrease in their physical stamina, so I ramped up my healthy eating efforts. But my husband made a huge deal about healthier eating in front of the kids, very loudly, and refused, and gets upset when I don't make the stuff he likes. Not wanting my kids to catch on that weight loss is the goal and make their body image worse, I focused on portion control. When they asked about the change, I said I was worried about their cholesterol and blood pressure, so we were practicing healthy habits. Kind of lame, I know, but I didn't know what else to say. But he always asks them if they want seconds, adds bacon bits and shredded cheese to their plates after I fix them, etc. He says they just need to be more active. While I agree, it's almost impossible to work off a bad diet, and he doesn't always enforce the activity thing anyway. We have made some incremental changes with activity though, which I'm proud of. But it's still a work in progress. I have tried to talk to him about my concerns for their health, but he is so deep in denial. He says it's just baby fat, and they'll grow out of it. And sometimes suggests my ED must be clouding my perception a bit, NGL. That really hurt my feelings. A lot. I just don't know what to do. I want them to be healthy and happy and not have to go through what I did with the ED. Or all the bullying that came with being big before the ED took hold. But I don't want them to have a hard time with their peers or develop health problems from being overweight either. I feel like he's actively trying to work against me, and it sucks. What do you think about these stories? Let me know in the comments.